Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
That is right, my friends. You are listening to Conservative, Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. Been talking here about this one big, beautiful bill that Trump is trying to get passed. Talking about there are some good things. There are some things that are misrepresented, lied about by the media, by the Democrats. Certainly that's always the case. But there's also some concerning things in this legislation. One of those involves at least, listen, this possibility of a database that would be built by Palantir. I believe that's how you say that. At least that's a fear, and it's gotten a lot of conservatives fired up because we don't want a government database. Anyway, we can talk briefly about that. So that's where we'll start today. And we've got a lot of things that I want to get to. I've told you that I want to give you updates on Jake Tapper because Alex Thompson, the two folks who suddenly decided that they were going to be journalists here when they had a book to sell and when there wasn't an election hanging in the balance. They could come out and tell us the truth about what was happening with Joe Biden and how the media, how the administration, and I would say how the media, they're slowly coming around, I guess, to admitting that the media was involved in this. But as you'll listen, as we get to that point, you'll hear Tapper basically say that the media, I guess, was intimidated. I don't know. It's just crazy stuff. But I'm going to talk about this. I told you any news I saw about Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson and some of these allegations, things that they're talking about out there that's in their book. I told you I would tell you about those because I told you not to buy the book. And there's some important things that they're going to tell us in the book. Of course, it would have mattered a whole lot more if those things would have been told to us before the election, when we could actually have done something with the information instead of just saying, that would have been nice to know 8 months ago or whatever, for the American people to know. Anyway, there's some things here, and since I told you not to buy the book, I have an obligation to update you, and I've got some of those things to get into in the latter part of the program today. So, before we get started, though, my friends, do you know where your money goes after you spend it? That answer makes you cringe. It's time to check out Freedom Marketplace. We here at the Todd Huff Show built this platform to connect conservatives like you with businesses that share your values, your principles, businesses that refuse to support leftist causes. It is free to use for you. There's no login required. And the purpose of this is to help keep your dollars aligned with your principles, because nothing is more aggravating than to fight for conservative principles only to find out that the businesses I was working with, doing business with, were taking my hard-earned dollars and then using it to promote the antithesis, the opposite of what I'm fighting for politically in this country. So that's what Freedom Marketplace prevents. Freedom Marketplace connects you with businesses that are pushing in the same direction you are. FreedomMarketplace.net is where you can go. Again, FreedomMarketplace.net, liberty and business for all my friends. All right, I want to look here, MSNBC. Now, it's MSNBC, I get it. Here it is. I'm just going to read this. Even Trump supporters are pushing back on his plans to merge Americans' data. Headline, this is Jahan Jones, I guess, is how I pronounce that. Got a little sub-headline here that says, Far Right flips out over reported Palantir plan. Even far-right influencers are creeped out by President Donald Trump's reported plan. Now, that's where I always look. Is it legit? Is this made up? Is it exaggerated? Is it designed to keep people from truly, to put distance between Trump and his supporters? It's a reported plan to work with MAGA-friendly tech company Palantir on merging, this is Peter Thiel's, he's involved here, on merging data on Americans from different agencies into a single location. A development that could lead to the federal government having unprecedented power to spy on and harass Americans. Newsweek highlighted, it's funny listening to MSNBC talk about it like this. This is the sort of stuff that MSNBC and the people on the left, they love this stuff. But they'll certainly use it to their political advantage if they can as well. Newsweek highlighted worried responses from Nick Fuentes, the Hodge twins, and other influencers who are sounding the alarm. So that's just a kind of a quick summary. But again, the details matter. If all this information is in multiple places and it's just being streamlined into one, is that a bad thing? But if it's a database, again, I understand, the American people, conservatives, we don't want to have a comprehensive database with information in there that's totally not relevant and that can be weaponized against it. This is the sort of thing that causes limited government people to lose their minds here. This is something that's upset some people. There are people that are really fired up about this. And if what's being reported is true, it's at least concerning. We don't want this sort of thing to happen no matter who's in the White House. So that's another reason to be a little skeptical here about what's happening in our nation's capital, especially as things are trying to get pushed through here. Trump's trying to push through the one big, beautiful bill. And I just want to speak to that, I guess, for a moment. If you've listened to this program, there's a couple of times that I've been against Trump, if you want to think about it that way. In general, I'm happy with what Trump is trying to do. In general, I'm thrilled with Trump's willingness to fight for issues that most every time align with what I believe, what I would define to be conservative principles and values, while at the same time saying that Trump is not an ideological conservative. Trump is a practical, he's a pragmatist. He's somebody who just looks for practical solutions and uses common sense. And of course, that often aligns, it always aligns with conservative principles and values. It's the left that has to do some mental gymnastics to explain why they support some of these crazy and ludicrous ideas that they have on the political left. So I've found myself in alignment with Trump. I genuinely don't have problems with his style. There's some examples. I feel like but I expect it, right? I don't want to go as far to say he's wrong. I personally don't like the way that he's gone after Rand here, but I understand. He's trying to get this done. If you ever notice, Trump is it is not. It sounds personal to Trump, but I don't think it ever really is. Trump is, again, looking at his objective. His objective right now is to get this bill passed by Congress and signed into law. That's what he wants. And so if you're on his side, he's going to say nice things about you. If you're against him, which in this case is against this bill, he's going to come after you, and he's going to say whatever he thinks he needs to say to get you uncomfortable, to get you to get his base fired up and angry at the individual, maybe make phone calls and that sort of stuff. That's how he operates. If you've ever noticed, going back to the 2016 election or primary process, I remember, he would go after these people in the debates. Ruthlessly attacking Little Marco, Lion Ted, and all this stuff. And the second that they drop out, the second that they conceded and dropped out of the race, the tone of Trump on them changed dramatically. Now, there might be some exceptions to where it never changed back. Maybe Jeb Bush would be one of those. I don't know. It's never going to be the case for president bribery. And that's just how, in general, Trump's going to say nice things once he sees your opposition has ended. Once he sees that you're not, you're now either on his side or he's defeated you, then he says nicer things. This is just how, I'm not endorsing that approach. I'm just saying that is the approach. And in general, I think I understand it. I can even accept it at points, while at the same time, that's not my personal style, and I don't want to come across as condoning some of these more extreme situations. But listen, if you're in politics, you've entered the arena. I mean, I've entered the arena. There are people who say terrible, terrible things about me, and they can say whatever they want to. I'm not interested in getting their praise and acceptance. That's not really of much interest to me. I will tell you that, as a person, again, growing up where I grew up, small town USA, pretty much everybody knew everybody. Not really having many enemies. I had some people that didn't like me. At the end of my high school days and whatever. I mean, I would say for absolutely no reason at all, but whatever. They can have their reasoning, and that's fine. But it's odd to me, especially coming from a community like I came, to enter into the social media arena, and you have people chiming in who literally know nothing about you, but that's part of the game. That's part of when you step into the arena, you'd best be prepared. Now, I'm not condoning people saying those things. I think people need to shape it up. You ought to be able to engage in free speech without saying some of these nasty, atrocious things about people. Use your freedom to say, hey, I'm gonna maybe attack them politically, attack the idea, maybe even come up with a nickname, but not some of these things are so over the top. I mean, you have people that are incited to try to hurt people with some of the things that are said. I mean, they've called Trump Hitler, a fascist, a Nazi. There were multiple attempts on his life, and listen, the reality is that he's in danger. I mean, this is, people hate this guy. People hate him. And while I can understand sometimes Trump creates a little bit, or maybe even a moderate amount of dislike towards himself with some of the ways he approaches it, it doesn't work that way with me, because I see him generally, we're on the same team in that sense. But nothing Trump has done in and of itself, outside of what people have then taken and amplified that message and stirred up hatred for him. He's not the one that stirred up the hatred. The hatred has been stirred up by people on the other side of the political aisle here. So, but I understand his approach. I don't have to like it. It's entertaining sometimes. Sometimes I think it just comes with the territory. People need to put their big boy pants on if they're boys, big girl pants on if they're girls, and just deal with it. But some of this stuff, there is a line in the minds of people, and you can cross it. But I think a lot of people don't understand or appreciate that about Trump. And I also think that some people don't fully, grasp or realize the magnitude of the problems that we have had in this country that are basically sitting on the throats of the American people. I mean, we have a heavy weight on the taxpayer in this country, a heavy weight because of the debt, because of the waste and the fraud and the abuse, which happens. People act like it doesn't happen. I've seen people who have said, look, I work for the government. I can't even I gotta get quotes for pencils. I gotta get the cheapest pencil. And I'm not saying that there's not mechanisms there that are designed for this sort of thing, but to act like there's no waste, fraud, and abuse at all in the government is insanity to me, especially given the amount of money that's being spent, especially given what we know about some of these people who run our government. These are not good things. These are not people who can be trusted. And candidly, no one should be trusted. There should be oversight. There should be, why didn't we have these level of audits before? And when we had some of these audits, why didn't we actually implement the changes to do something about it? When things were revealed, why didn't we ever say that can't happen again? There's been agencies that have not passed an audit for many, many years, and what are we doing about it? Nothing. It's just like a game. If this was the private sector, I think Elon pointed this out. If this was the private sector and you didn't pass an audit, if you failed, if some of the things that were revealed that have happened in our federal government were revealed to have happened in businesses that are publicly traded or have boards of directors or whatever, I mean, people would be potentially in jail, probably in jail, right? They would be delisted from the stock. There would be consequences for this. But in our government, what do they often get? They often get raises. They often get, just cushy jobs, better retirement packages. It's really inexcusable, but yet, my friends, that's where we are. So, I want to play here. Where did this go? I mentioned Elon. Elon has spoken out against this particular piece of legislation. He's basically said, I'm kind of over this. I can't believe what has been happening here. I can't support this. And this has been, I think I've got it on my phone still, but this has been, Caroline Leavitt was asked about this. I'm trying to cue this up now. I've got to share it from my phone. Here we go. Yeah. So she's asked about this by Peter Ducey. Peter Ducey asks her about this. I'm going to play this soundbite. She kind of blows it off. And you'll note that Trump isn't going, at least so far. This could change today with Trump, but I haven't seen Trump go after Elon in this area. I have a lot of respect for Elon. I have a lot of respect for Elon. I've got concerns about Elon too. I'm not just, again, blindly following him wherever he goes and some of this transhuman stuff and all that. Whatever, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just what he's been doing with Doge, what he's been doing with supporting the movement that has led us to some of these things, being possible. He's supported candidates that are pushing in the right direction. There's a lot of good things here, but again, he's not perfect, and that's never been my point to say that. No one I ever talk about on this program outside of Jesus is perfect. So, but Musk has come out to criticize this piece of legislation. Here's what he said on X. I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it. That's what he said. So Peter Ducey asks Caroline Leavitt to comment.
How mad do you think President Trump is going to be when he finds out that Elon Musk said, I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it.
Look, the president on this bill, it doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it.
Yeah, it doesn't change his opinion. The president's in favor of this bill. He's sticking to it. That's the response. They don't really get into it. But again, there's legitimate opposition to this. There's opposition that's based on insane, faulty grounds. And again, we went through that in the last hour. Primarily, the folks who say people are going to die if this legislation is passed. That's what Hakeem Jeffries is saying. That's nonsense. But for those who say that this is, out of control spending and there's too many things tucked away into this bill, that's some legitimate reasons to oppose this. And I think some of these things ideally would be addressed. Rand's out there saying, as I said earlier, that he would be happy, he could support this if they just took the portion of the bill that raised the debt ceiling and put it into another bill. So there's lots of problems here. I don't know. It's messy. Part of me wants to say that it's just messy and I've got to be more practical. Part of me says this is the best we can get. There's a lot of good things in here. Part of me says if you allow this now, when is it going to change? I don't have the answers here. I don't. I know I sometimes will say some things that and it's hyperbole and just for some dramatic effect and fun. But folks, I don't know what the answer is here. I don't know what the answer is here. The practical side of me, the pragmatist, says this might be the best we can get. The person, the part of me that says we have to do this the right way from the beginning. We have to cut this, get this fixed now. There's no reason we can't. I would like to believe that part, but I also think, man, we're really dragging ourselves across the finish line just to get this. And you're going to lose another group of people if this bill, makes any more cuts or just it's just the realities that we live with. And I try to look at this when I have these talks with myself. I mean, there's things that, look, probably in the final bill I'm not going to like. But that's, part of me says that that's life. And I look at what's the trajectory. What's the trajectory? Are we going more in the direction now, if this bill passes, than we have been previously? I think that the answer is yes. Is it still far from perfect? You better believe it. And I would agree with Musk in some of these things. But what is the solution? I mean, you're still dealing with people you don't who want certain things in legislation, who are accustomed to getting certain things. They've been inside the belly of the beast for a long time. I don't know. I don't know if there could be something better gotten here or not. I'd like to think so, but I also, the practical part of me says this might be the best that they're going to get. I don't know, my friends. I'd like to see all this stuff cleaned up, but I just unfortunately don't know how realistic that is in reality. So, got to take a break. Quick time out. You're listening to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. Back in a minute. Welcome back, my friends. I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. I told you that I would keep you up to date on our friend Jake Tapper and our friend Alex Thompson, who's not as well known, but Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson have written this stupid book about what was happening with Joe Biden's cognitive decline, how they say the the administration hid this from the media and the American people. And now that it doesn't matter what his condition, it matters personally to Joe Biden and his family, him as a human being, but I mean, as far as it mattering for politics in this great nation, since it doesn't matter, the outcome of an election isn't at stake. They're writing a book and they're trying to sell the book. And I hope not a single person in this audience buys this book. I think if you buy this book, I think that you are rewarding someone financially for being a professional deceiver. And so because of that, I've said I'm going to keep you abreast of some of the stupid things that come out through conversations or that may come out from people's commentary on the book itself. And so it's with that said, Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson are making their rounds. We're on a podcast. They run a podcast with Jonah Goldberg called The Remnant. And I just want you to listen to some of this. How Jake Tapper, it's like he gets so close to agreeing with what I've been saying on this program for the 10 years that we've been, nearly 10 years now, this is our 10th year, that we've been broadcasting this program. He's so close, but yet still so far away. I want you to listen to this exchange. So it's Jake Tapper, it's Jonah Goldberg, and you might hear a little bit from Alex Thompson, but I think the vast majority of this is Jake Tapper, occasionally Jonah Goldberg. That being said, just listen to this stuff. Here it is.
It is indisputable to me.
Jonah Goldberg.
Maybe you guys can dispute it, or try to, that the press would have been much, much more curious about this story if Biden were Republican.
Obviously.
Or if Donald Trump were a normie Republican, right? If Donald Trump was a Bush-type, Romney-type Republican,
I don't agree with
the
that.
stakes would have been perceived as less. But like the one group of people who believe Biden's existential threat to democracy stuff about Trump was a big chunk of the DC press corps.
It's all of them.
I think
Jonah?
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I
Alex
think
Thompson.
there is some truth to that. I don't know if it's the vast majority of DC press corps, but yeah, I think
It's all of them,
some
Alex.
people let their ideological and personal feelings and sort of I mean, you see this like said outwardly by some press critics and media thinkers that this is a national emergency and you need to drop objectivity in this moment. The thing that I've always thought was really strange about this argument is if you really believe that, like it's a national emergency, drop objectivity, I've always felt it's like very it's like very self-important to believe that if you covered Joe Biden in a critical but fair way, your reporting is so important that it could swing the election.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's like, if you believe that Donald Trump is Hitler, like the Weimar Republic didn't fall because of like tough press coverage of it. It's like, it fell because they were making mistakes. But I I just think that every time the press, on the Biden people front, I feel often that most of the time when the press tried to hold up a mirror to the Biden people, they just looked the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with your general premise that, and I think it's unfortunate that a lot of the press criticism and journalism and most known journalism professors out there have been saying since the Bush years that it is the responsibility of journalists to basically take up the Democratic cause, capital D, not small d, the Democratic Party cause. And I think that's unfortunate. I don't doubt that there were a lot of people,
Jake,
who viewed the world that way. I think it's probably more complicated than partisanship.
Of course.
Yes. Just because we contain multitudes, we're people too, journalists, and I think that there's probably a lot of groupthink. I think there's probably a lot of intimidation, having nothing to do with who's doing the intimidating, but having to do with it's not like if you look at what happened to Annie Linsky and Siobhan Hughes of the Wall Street Journal after they wrote their story in June 2024 about behind the scenes, Biden shows signs of slipping or whatever the title was, completely accurate story. And the White House went to war on the Wall Street Journal. And Democratic senators and House members were involved, pushing back on something that some of them had witnessed with their own eyes.
So he's admitting that they're wimps. We're supposed to feel sorry for these clowns because they published a story questioning the administration's ability to be, to show any mental fitness whatsoever, or at least to have some obvious signs of decline or problems. And because the administration fought back, the journalists, we're going to excuse them. These are people who've talked about saving our democracy. These are people who think that they're carrying freedom on their very shoulders by opposing President Trump at every turn. They get a little bit of pushback from the White House. What a bunch of wimps. My goodness, they couldn't sit in this chair for 5 seconds. They couldn't sit in the chair of someone who has conservative messages to share with the American people or in Washington, D.C. They couldn't do that for a millisecond. What a bunch of wimps. I don't care. Are you telling me? I mean, Jake, I am just dumbfounded by this entire thing. Jake Tapper, the more he talks, the more he ends up saying exactly what I've been saying on this program for the better part of a decade. And we're all supposed to believe that a guy that was inside, who had access to anybody that he wanted to speak to, he could watch this, he saw this, he knew the people, these were colleagues. Whatever he tells us he knows now, I'm just telling you, you know that there's more things that he knows, that he knew sooner, that he had. It is just unbelievable to me that this guy, I mean, he's either admitting to being fully incompetent or a complete wimp, either way, or a complete pawn of the administration. That's what we're left with here. But he continues. I want to hear you hear as much of this.
I think that's unpleasant.
It's unpleasant.
And what Annie and Siobhan went through, I think, was traumatic.
They got their feelings
for
hurt.
them. And, obviously people don't think of journalists as deserving of pity or sympathy in any way.
That would be me.
But I mean, I'm just saying, like, I witnessed what they went through, and I had them on my show after the debate.
Need a GoFundMe set up.
They should have been booked everywhere.
But why weren't they, Jake?
They were right, and their story was proven correct. And they were stars, and they should have won a Pulitzer Prize for it, as far as I'm concerned. And they were not.
They give you to say it now,
and they did not get a Pulitzer. So I think there's lots of reasons for it. I don't disagree with your general premise that if this had been, Joe Biden versus Mitt Romney, maybe the press corps would have been tougher. But I also think the press corps was pretty unfair to Mitt Romney in 2012.
I mean, there's so much to unpack here. Jake's late to the fight. I've shared on this program before. There was an issue. I forget the issue. It might have been, it was in Trump's first term in office. I do know that. I think it was potentially the fight over a Supreme Court justice, maybe. There was a fight in Congress, and I remember, I rarely do this. You know that we rarely have people on this program, which we might change, but just historically I haven't, for several reasons. But one of the reasons is precisely for what I'm about to tell you. I reached out to a senator in my state. I'm just going to tell you, I don't even care anymore. I don't care if you're on his team. If I don't care if you, I don't care. Just, this is the truth. I reached out to Senator Todd Young's team, and I said, hey, I'd like to have the senator on, and I forget the issue. I got the records here, the emails. And the response I got was he'd be happy to come on and talk about it once the issue is basically decided. This is exactly what Jake Tapper's doing here. That's why I'm mentioning it. You're not a hero if you're not out there engaged in the fight. If you wait to see where the dust settles, if you wait to want to talk about it after it actually matters, then you're not a hero. You're not a hero in the situation. You could have done great things with your life in the past, but in this particular situation, you're not. In fact, I would say that you're demonstrating your lack of ability to be a leader that we should be voting for. Jake Tapper dropped the ball here. Todd Young dropped the ball there. I've got to drop this segment, my friends, because I'm up against the timeout, the clock here, my friends. So quick timeout is in order. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. I'm just going through this clip with Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson. They're sitting down on a podcast with Jonah Goldberg called The Remnant. And Jake Tapper's admitting gradually to a bunch of things that we've known on this program for as long as I've been doing this show about who the media is. Jake Tapper's just now waking up to reality, but he still doesn't quite get there. He still doesn't quite define the situation or the characters who are involved as clearly and as boldly and directly as he should. So I want to play I didn't think I could get through all this. I think I can. I'm going to pick up where we left off here. Jake Tapper, Jonah Goldberg, Alex Thompson talking about this. Here we go.
Well, for sure they were, yeah.
I don't know that premise to be correct. I think there's also just a question of there's a difference between commentary about look at Biden tripping, look at Biden falling off his bike, look at Biden making these gaffes, pointing them out, showing them, putting them on air, and the investigative reporting that Alex and I did. That I know you read the book, and we haven't mentioned it yet. But Stephen Hayes, your co-editor, did a rave review of Original Sin. For anybody
Don't
out there
fall
who
for
hasn't
it,
purchased
my
it, you might
friends.
want to read his.
I don't care what Stephen Hayes.
He got it, man. That guy's
Goldberg
great. He gets
says.
it.
That guy sucks.
But I will say that
So now he's saying Stephen Hayes gets it. Where have you've not gotten it? Jake Tapper's been there for 30 years or some such thing. He's just now getting it. I just can't believe the audacity of this whole thing to peddle books about information that was there for anybody who cared to pay attention and tell the American people about, to dig, to ask questions about, and they didn't. They didn't. Don't buy this stupid book.
To the degree that there is a difference between looking at Joe Biden, seeing that he's aging, and commenting on it however one is commenting on it, versus finding out that in December 2022, as Alex and I did, he couldn't come up with the name of Jake Sullivan, his national security advisor, in the middle of the day.
Okay, but why didn't we know this, Jake? I was giving commentary in November or whatever of 2022. I could tell, the listeners of this program could tell, people who were paying attention could tell, the guy in the White House had no idea what was going on. And you're saying, oh, you can comment on it, you can talk about him falling and aging. I didn't talk about him aging. I talked about him losing his mental fitness to be president of the United States. And I didn't need to be in Washington, D.C. I didn't need to know he couldn't recall Jake Sullivan's name in the middle of the day. I don't even understand what, of all the things that I personally saw from him, I don't see why that's even more problematic than the things I saw. I saw the man freeze on numerous occasions, totally lose his train of thought. I saw him have to be guided and told where to stand. I saw him on stage with world leaders wander off into the distance after some event like he was some totally lost individual, just wandering and meandering around. I watched him during an interview get up and leave during I forgot about that. He was sitting down on television, got up, thought it was time to get up and walk away, sitting down at a table with some make-believe journalist, undoubtedly. Finished what he said, the segment was over, he just got up and walked off as the camera was still rolling instead of waiting to the end of the segment. I saw him faceplant yes during his speech to the United States Air Force Academy. I saw him somehow tip over a bicycle that was virtually stationary. I don't even know how these things are possible. I witnessed these things, Jake. I think forgetting the name of Jake Sullivan is no different than any of those things that I saw. Where was your curiosity?
I think there's a difference. Not, breaking the story that he did not recognize George Clooney, one of the most recognizable faces in the world, and the man throwing him a $30 million fundraiser, extends the story, provides nuance beyond, look at this adult old man. We all see this. This is not that. This is who's running the country here. Because what happened at the debate was,
gracious.
If we all knew it, then that debate wouldn't have been so shocking, right? I mean, if we all knew, oh, he's going to come out on stage in his pants.
So this, you like the language he used there, but we all didn't know it because you all in the media didn't cover it. That's why we did. Oh, I love how you act like you're not part of this problem. This is rich for me, Jake. He continues here.
Then that wouldn't have been the moment it was, but it was a historical moment, perhaps the most significant presidential debate in American history. And that's because people knew he was old, but they didn't know how addled and bad it really was. So it's it's all very complicated, which is not to let the press off the hook or myself off the hook.
I know you're not off my hook,
but
Jake.
It's more complicated than just the press is partisan and therefore they didn't report on this.
Yeah, it's more complicated. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. It's complicated when you're trying to excuse your behavior. It's complicated when you're trying to give the American people rationale for something for which there is no rationale, there is no justification. You, my friend, stand as the one who is in the wrong here, clearly and obviously. And anyone who was paying attention knew there were problems. The people who didn't know there were problems were people that listened to you folks act as though there wasn't problems. Jake didn't let anybody talk about this on his program. I'm out of time, though. Gotta go. SDG.